So, Silvia, thanks a lot for meeting me here. It's a pleasure to have you. I'll just start introducing myself a little bit, and then you can also tell us about you. So, I'm Stephanie. I work for VAIOT as a product marketing manager, and today the idea will be to discuss a little bit more about this theme, which is the law. And I would love to hear from you about a bit more about your background. So maybe you can tell us that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you for having me in the interview. So my name is Silvia Calls, and I am a lawyer. I've been working in fintech for like 15 years, and mainly my day to day is attending those companies who have like any type of issue on the data protection, on the KYC, on mediation, or any like trouble on their process, and then on the commercial contracts, which is the aim of most of my customers, which they are on developing a SaaS or whatever they're doing, they want something, or they're raising a round, financial round, so they want to know about their rights and the clauses they might include on those contracts. So that's my day to day, and that's who I am from a legal side. And what was the next question, Stephanie?
Thank you, Silvia. This is super helpful, and it's a pleasure to have you here. I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation because of all your background and experience, specifically within this area, and for people who are interested in learning more about fintech and technology in general and the legislation behind it.
Great.
So today we will discuss the theme of the law. So the law, we were talking previously that is a controversial subject because it has different interpretations. So one thing is what you can public understand as the law, and one thing is what VAIOT thinks of the law, or the concept from VAIOT, from decentralized law. So for us, it is the building legal tools that are decentralized or are within the Web3 technology to facilitate these processes for people. For example, dispute resolution. But of course, there are other interpretations. So I was hoping you can tell me first, how would you explain what is decentralized law to somebody who is unfamiliar with this term?
Okay, so starting with that, I would mainly give some background of what's the beginning of decentralization, and it's in finance, to be honest. Yeah. So what comes to my mind is decentralized finance is what blockchain is more focused on, and all the crypto side, and then from that, regulations come behind, at least in the last years on MiCA, and then we will go deep onto that. But to make like an overview, it would be like, what is DeFi? So it's decentralized finance. It's like when you have peer-to-peer transactions where there's no third party intermediating, and that makes sense if you want to, I don't know, make like any type of transaction without anyone behind, or any government or third party, like taking care of taxes, or who does what, or just backed on the fiat coin. So that's one point on decentralization. And it has sense because it's like, if we have any issue, I cannot go to a regulator, I cannot go anywhere. Sure. It's just based on my confidence and trusting the peer-to-peer system I'm betting for, and that's it. So yeah. That's for me any decentralized type of technology, and the DLT is decentralized technology. On top of that, I would like to add that La Ley de Mercado de Valores, the market value regulation in Spain, which is also like a European regulation, has already acknowledged DLT type of operations. Hmm. So like DLT operations acknowledge like settlement accountability. So yeah. If you do settlements on accountability through DLT, this can be acknowledged as a normal settlement. So this is a big step on Article 2 on la Comisión Nacional del Mercado de Valores already acknowledges that, which is a big step.
Absolutely. This is wonderful. I can see how governments and legislations are slowly starting to adapt to these new technologies. So what is for you the potential of this? Like what are the benefits?
Yeah, so if we talk about this type of decentralized regulation, then it comes up of what are like the type of cryptocurrency, like cryptocurrencies or figures like NFTs, which are not regulated. But yes, there are, for example, other type of currencies that are regulated in MiCA. Okay, so are like asset referred tokens, and you've got other type of tokens which are regulated. So then we get inside this new regulation like marketing crypto assets regulation, which is coming into force in Europe, and the regulators are already providing the forms for the companies to adhere so they can get the license to appear as CASP, which is crypto assets like managers. So they can do trading, and they can do any type of issue this type of crypto coins, assets, and so on. So this is one thing which is super interesting, and we've got this type of cryptocurrencies and this type of management. And from the other side, you also got the law from Mercado de Valores.
Yes.
That acknowledges what I've told you on the Article 2. And then also, if you are a company, Ley de Mercado de Valores and also other legislation in Spain acknowledges, for example, what is to make like a company which assets should be decentralized. For example, yes. For example, if you have real estate asset tokenization, in Spain, this can be done, for example, when creating a company. So you can establish on the bylaws of the company that company would be tokenized. So you've got some type of shares, and that shares can be tokenized, which is a big step.
Yeah.
Be done into blockchain. So all those regulations and steps on real estate tokenization, on crypto assets, on NFTs, on whatever, they are like a big step that is taken now on decentralized law. This is one type of decentralized, which is very crypto friendly or very like blockchain friendly. So this is one step. And then it comes to the smart contracts, because everything is backed with the smart contracts. And what comes with that? So smart contracts are like a logic on blockchain. So there are some rules established there. So if this type of situation come up, then these consequences will come along. So in that situation, we've got that response. So that's smart contracts, and it's executed automatically. So you set in a code some type of expectations, and if that come across, you've got that consequences, whatever. So with the blockchain technology, this cannot be interfered by third parties. It's transactionable, so you can follow up and so on. So it provides even a bigger guarantee of security to its users. But those smart contracts are always backed by commercial contracts. So you do like from as a lawyer a commercial contract that can be also linked to a smart contract. So if a smart contract is broken, you can go to the legal side. And then if something happens on that, then you can go to the court and start a legal process against the other part, because this is backed by a commercial contract or legal contract. So that all can also be like a tool provided to lawyers or to companies using their lawyer to give extra guarantees. So we've got a smart contract that provides extra security for whatever operation that can come across. And in the event this is, broken or whatever, or some law, it's like you got the vulneration of any law, you can go to court if it came to if you have that event.
Yeah. Okay. So you've mentioned that smart contracts are automatically executed
Yeah.
according to previous agreements that people have internally. Of course, they can also be backed with commercial agreements that
Yeah.
are, of course, legally binding. I wonder, like, so do you see how these tools can benefit lawyers in some way? So is there a way of working these together? So the law with the actual current legal industry.
Yeah, I mean, law has always been very like tailor-made.
Hmm.
So lawyers had lots of work to do on defining each contract, on looking like, for example, you have a case on the court, you have to go to the laws and regulations. At least here in Europe, I think in the US it works differently, but you have to go to
Hmm.
regulation, internal regulations, and then European regulations, and then to jurisprudence and see the court decisions of what has been decided previously, and without that information you can do a process that
Yeah.
on yes. And then if this comes to like commercial contracts, on the last years there's been like a lot of contracts that has been standardized, so that
Hmm.
makes it much easier for the users to understand what they are signing and what's going on. Or even you can download a contract and that makes it much easier. At the
Yeah.
end, I would definitely recommend that this should be like backed or reviewed by a lawyer,
Yeah.
because you don't really know what you are signing and the consequences. So I think that downloading a contract is something interesting if you know what you are signing, or you know about law,
Yeah.
know how binding is that. So at the
Yeah.
end, these tools can be very helpful as long as you know what you are doing.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. I think you raised a very interesting point here because one of the products that VAIOT has is called Legal Torch, and it has up to 70 contracts that are already checked by lawyers, and they are compliant according to the company Grant Thornton, the consultancy company.
Yes.
So this means that it makes people utilize contracts
Yeah.
that are valuable, that are reliable,
Mhm.
but also they can utilize Web3 technology with the dispute resolution system. So this
Yeah.
is something that I wanted to bring up to you. We know that there law enforcement exists in the day-to-day world with judges and court and all of this,
Yeah.
but then we have dispute resolution within this decentralized um, industry. So I wanted to ask you, like, maybe can you let us know what you think of this? So the process is like we have this smart contract, we agreed on the process, we have a problem, and but I don't want to go to court. Maybe this is too aggressive, so I propose going into a decentralized court to
Yeah.
resolve this dispute.
Okay. So what I think, thinking of decentralized and court are two contradictory things. So if it's
Yeah,
decentralized, there's no court, because it should be
sure.
like a B2B agreement. So what I think is like establishing, instead of naming it decentralized, it's like establishing some sort of mediation process or
Yeah,
arbitration process where people or users can adhere firstly. So they raise their issue, or maybe you have like first step when you are like in an e-commerce, as an example, you go to customer service. So you try to solve your problem directly with whoever is on the other side. It's better if there's no bot, so you can talk to a physical
yeah.
person who will try to understand your topic. Okay, if that doesn't go, or you need to escalate that, then you
Hmm.
might go to any type of commercial arbitration system where, because the e-commerce or the platform has had this problem several times, they
Yeah.
might already establish some type of rules and processes that the customer should go through, and
Yeah.
that would be the best way. And so I think that on top of that, the commercial side should be more linked to these policies and procedures. So
Hmm.
instead of just focusing on revenues, which obviously as a company we all think that revenues are number one, it should be more customer focused, and
Yeah.
then looking for the yes, the best interest of the customer. in
Mm-hmm.
that sense, and make some policies that are aligned with the laws, with the culture, and with the customer-centric policy. So
Yeah.
with that policies and procedures, then there should be some type of mediation. So
Mm-hmm.
the customer could find like a happy solution, or at least something
Exactly.
like before going to court, because at the end, the courts will always be there, and
Yeah.
they are normally expensive and they take time. So to avoid that type of procedures, which are like unpleasant for anyone and
Mm-hmm.
expensive at the end, yes, I really agree that based on policies that are also like backed or underlined or reviewed by lawyers, there can be a lot of work done, and you can prevent from conflicts coming up from customers.
Yeah, yeah, I think this is brilliant, and it's precisely one of the solutions or main key elements of decentralized law as we understand, is to give the opportunity for people in different parts of the world, even. So, how do you resolve a conflict if you live in China and you have a transaction in Spain? So, who's right? Different languages, barriers as well, and like you said, the time that you spend and the cost that has are incredibly high. So, saying this, maybe I would like you to tell me, like, how do you think these services can be can help communities that maybe don't have the access? Because we're talking about business transactions that they have a lot of money, maybe, yeah, they don't want to spend.
Yeah,
But what about people, individual people and freelancers that they have
yeah,
an issue with their customer and maybe
yeah.
they don't have the money to pay a lawyer to raise the complaint?
Yeah, I think that the platforms should already provide this type of reviews for the service they provide. Like if I am a freelance and I'm providing my service on a platform, and I can have reviews from my customers that prove that I'm brilliant, or I'm like I give provide my work on a technical level and whoever ever. So I think that inside those platforms there should be the option as a freelancer, or someone who provides services, to be rated in a positive way always, so avoiding like misleading behaviors. And then also providing this type of, I don't know, like mediation center or those centralized type of yes, like finding solutions with a third party, which is not decentralized because there's a third party there, that based on these working policies and also commercial policies or internal policies
Hmm.
can reach some type of agreement. And in line with that, I think that there should always be the option of, I don't know, like freezing some type of amount in wallets just in case, I don't know, there's like something going on. Because you said it, if you have like a conflict with some supplier or like a partner
Yeah.
in China, how can you solve that without going to court in China, which entails looking for a lawyer in China, paying the
Yeah.
taxes, being the lawyer? You don't know the law, if that it's beneficial for you or no. I understand the law in Spain, in Europe, in the US, but maybe in China, I don't have that guarantee that would be user
Yeah.
friendly. Because here in Europe, you have the law for users and consumers, which
Yeah.
defend clearly with high standards of insurance that users and consumers will be protected. But I don't know if that happens in other countries. So, with the aim to have that aligned, there should be, in my point of view, some type of guarantees that if you are like on that type of platforms, there should be some wallets with some funds. So that should be like, I don't know, froze there until the conflict is finished, and depending on the resolution, maybe, I don't know, some type of fine should come up or something should be resolved.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is the main principle behind the decentralized dispute resolution system, and it's precisely so you just have to agree first with the terms and conditions of the transaction, of the service transaction. Then you put some money on hold, and until this work is released, and then you're happy with it, the
Yeah,
money doesn't get to the other account. So I think this is really important about that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you, Silvia. We are talking about things that have happened in the past few
Yes.
years, but also with the arrival of generative AI, now there are even more evolving things and even more changes. So, can you tell me what do you think is missing in education for lawyers that needs to be told now so they can be prepared for the future?
For the AI, you mean?
Yes, for
Line
AI
AI or
and
whatever,
also
yes.
yes.
Okay, so that's a good question, but I will give you a very high level solution because I was not thinking about like, but there's like in terms of tools that can be
Mhm.
used. I mean, now with Chat GTP, I mean, not only you lawyers, but people think that they can find a legal solution or they are lawyers
Exactly.
already without having done 5 years of college and then master. So that's to be careful. But lawyers can find on these AI solutions lots of like moving forward faster, easier, without spending so many time drafting
Hmm.
contracts or so on, so that you can go to the point easier.
Yeah.
I think that one important topic here is to avoid like pointing up some type of, I don't know, collectives or type of decisions which
Hmm.
need a human taking that decision. So
Of course.
yeah, so that's a very important thing. So it's not on the lawyer side, but it's more on decisions that can affect human beings should not
Hmm.
be taken by AI. There should be like a person taking the type of decisions that will really be binding for them.
Yeah.
Because in terms of, I don't know, where do you live, or what is your race, or what is your gender, this can be like, you know, defining you in somehow, and you don't want to be defined on that, type of
Category. Yeah.
category, and that
Hmm.
would be very like unfair. So to avoid that, I think this is a big point. To AI is very good, very productive, very move forward, but in terms
Yeah.
of decisions based on that affect human, I don't know, life, that
Yeah.
be taken to human decision. And moreover, I think that AI can help a lot, even
Hmm.
us as users and consumers
Yeah.
and lawyers doing this work. So yes, it can help.
Yeah, I think there is a question that often arises to people. It's like, but why should I, pay a lawyer, hire a lawyer to get me this contract when I can just find a template online and ask ChatGPT to personalize it? So maybe you can tell me more about the value of
Yeah, I
having
would
a
say
lawyer.
like a friend of mine. So do you think that using Chat GTP you can make an operation as a doctor?
Right.
So if you have like some like injury in your finger, you can do that? No, I don't think so, because I'm not
Yeah.
a doctor. So I don't know how. Even I heard the ChatGPT saying, "Put the needle, just sew your injury, and go ahead." I would never do that.
Yeah.
So it's the same. You need some preparation behind before taking that risk. Obviously, health it's much higher than a contract. It's just a fun example, so we can all remember, right? But at
Exactly.
the end, it's how can you make a decision or sign something that will trigger some consequences and will affect third parties from you, and you are doing that without any supervision of someone
Hmm.
who has studied the law and see all the, I don't know, the repercussions. I mean, what means signing that and what means that clauses and what would trigger all of that. So I would definitely like recommend having a legal assessment
Yeah.
so you know what you are getting into.
Of course, of course. Thank you for highlighting that. And now, with that note, and to finalize, I would like to know more about what to expect in the future. So, we talk about blockchain, we talk about AI. It's like very deep technology. So, maybe you can tell me what do you think, like how do you envision the future? What are the elements that more excite you about these technologies and what's coming?
So I think that many things can be changed from like public governments, public bodies, which that's exciting because normally administration is like tough, slow, and they always go behind, technology. So
Yeah.
it seems that on the last years they are just keeping quite like aligned with the new regulation, with the new technology, which is like something positive. But in terms of, I don't know, crypto and all the finance side, that it's getting more interesting. And, years ago, nobody trusted on crypto. And even, I don't know, any type of older people would do nothing. And I think that with MiCA, with Marketing Crypto Assets Regulation, banks will have like their crypto ATM. So you will be able to do that, and that's a positive thing. Also, there will be other type of businesses based on, I don't know, NFTs. So rewardings on associations, making groups of people, and other type of influentials that won't be directly linked to the government or this type of structured type of society.
Yeah.
So I think that the new leaders will also come with who will be influencing like the rest of the communities, and the law will be behind that. So all this technology will help other type of society in the macroeconomic side. So I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I recently saw an interview with a historian, and he was saying that we are in a critical moment of history to really shape the future. Like
Mhm.
every generation thinks they can shape the future, but now it's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
So this is,
The technology
yeah,
and
history.
communications, I think the other type of leaders will come up definitely. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, Silvia. So thanks a lot for taking the time. Maybe you can tell the public where they can find you and contact you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, Stephanie. They can find me in abogadosfintech.com, and they can find me also in LinkedIn, looking for my name, Silvia Calls, with two L's and an S. And thanks again for your interview and for counting on me. It's been a pleasure, Stephanie.
You too. Thank you.